Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Shadowhawk, watching the stars through the main viewport. The ship moved through space like a ghost, invisible to all sensors. Its quantum phase cloaking system made it the most advanced vessel humanity had ever built. Jake had commanded the ship for 2 years, but he still felt amazed by what it could do. "Captain, we're approaching the Kepler 442 system," said Lisa Carter from the tactical station. She was young but sharp, with quick reflexes and a good eye for combat. "Sensors are picking up massive energy signatures ahead." Jake walked over to her station and looked at the display. What he saw made his blood run cold. Hundreds of ships filled the space around the fourth planet. The vessels were huge and angular, painted in the deep purple colors of the Zelrani Empire. Each ship was easily 10 times larger than the Shadowhawk. "How many?" Jake asked. 347 ships, sir," Lisa replied. "It's the biggest fleet I've ever seen." Pete Sullivan looked up from his engineering console. His face was pale with worry. "Captain, that's enough firepower to glass an entire planet." New Portland doesn't stand a chance. New Portland was home to 4 million human colonists. They had farms, schools, and families. The colony had no military defenses beyond a few patrol boats. The Zelrani fleet could destroy everything in minutes. Amy Rodriguez turned from her communications station. "Sir, I'm picking up Zelrani command frequencies. They're planning to attack in 6 hours. The colony won't even know they're coming." Jake felt his hands clench into fists. The Zelrani Empire had been expanding into human space for months. They saw humans as weak and primitive. To them, human colonies were nothing more than obstacles to remove. They never bothered to talk or negotiate. They just took what they wanted. "Can we warn the colony?" Jake asked. Amy shook her head. "Not without breaking communications silence. If we send a message, every Zelrani ship in the system will know we're here. Our mission orders are to observe only." Jake stared at the tactical display. The Zelrani flagship sat in the center of the formation. It was a massive dreadnought called the Inevitable Victory. The ship was over 2 kilometers long and bristled with weapons. Its commander was probably planning the attack right now, deciding how to destroy 4 million innocent people. "Captain," said Dr. Helen Murphy from the science station, "I'm detecting weapons charging across the fleet. They're preparing for bombardment." Jake closed his eyes and thought about his orders. The Shadowhawk was an experimental ship on a secret mission. Command wanted them to gather intelligence on Zelrani movements, not start fights. But Jake had seen what happened when the Zelrani attacked human colonies. They left nothing alive. "Lisa, can you target the flagship's command center?" he asked. Lisa's fingers danced over her controls. "Yes, sir, but we'd have to get close, very close." "How close?" "Within 500 meters of their hull," Pete whistled low. "That's suicide, Captain. If they detect us at that range, we're dead." Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. They had been together for 2 years, fighting in the darkness between stars. Lisa Carter had saved his life 3 times. Pete Sullivan had kept their ship running through impossible situations. Amy Rodriguez could intercept enemy communications faster than anyone in the fleet. Dr. Murphy had helped design the cloaking system that kept them alive. "What are our options?" Jake asked. "We could try to reach the nearest human base," Amy suggested. "Send word through proper channels." "That would take 18 hours, Pete said. "The colony will be dead by then." "We could try a long-range transmission," Lisa offered. "Warn them to evacuate." "The Zelrani would trace the signal back to us," Dr. Murphy said. "We'd lose the ship and the colony would still die. They don't have enough transport to evacuate 4 million people." Jake walked to the main viewport and stared at the enemy fleet. The Zelrani ships moved in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming in the starlight. They looked beautiful and terrible at the same time. Each one carried enough firepower to level a city. "Captain," Amy said quietly, "I'm picking up transmissions from the colony. They're broadcasting a children's concert from the main settlement. Kids are singing songs about Earth." Jake closed his eyes and listened to the faint transmission. Young voices sang about blue skies and green fields, about a world most of them had never seen. In 6 hours, those voices would be silent forever. "Lisa, plot an attack vector on the flagship," he said. "Sir?" she asked. "You heard me. Get us close to that dreadnought." Pete stood up from his station. "Captain, this is madness. We're one ship against an entire fleet." "No," Jake said. "We're one ship they can't see. That makes all the difference." He turned to face his crew. "I won't order you to do this. If anyone wants to object, speak now." The bridge was silent for a long moment, then Lisa smiled grimly. "I'm with you, Captain. Let's show these aliens what humans can do." "The cloak is holding steady," Pete reported. "We can make the run. Communications are ready," Amy said. "I'll monitor their frequencies." Dr. Murphy nodded. "All systems are green, Captain." Jake felt pride swell in his chest. His crew was the best in the human fleet. They understood what had to be done. "Take us in," he ordered. The Shadowhawk turned toward the enemy fleet, invisible and silent as death itself. The Zelrani had no idea what was coming for them. They had never faced an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't predict, couldn't understand. They were about to learn what it meant to fight humans. The Shadowhawk glided through space toward the Zelrani fleet like a hunting shark. Jake Morrison stood behind Lisa Carter as she guided the ship between the massive enemy vessels. The cloaking system bent light around their hull, making them completely invisible to Zelrani sensors. 2,000 meters to the flagship," Lisa whispered. 1,500, 1,000. Jake watched the inevitable victory grow larger on the screen. The dreadnought was enormous, its hull covered with weapon ports and sensor arrays. Thousands of Zelrani crew members worked inside, never knowing that death approached from the darkness. 500 meters, Lisa said. "We're in attack position." "Pete, are the torpedoes ready?" Jake asked. "Armed and locked on their command center," Pete replied. 2 quantum torpedoes, full yield." Jake took a deep breath. Once they fired, there would be no going back. The Zelrani would know humans could strike from the shadows. Everything would change. "Fire," he ordered. 2 bright streaks of energy shot from the Shadowhawk and slammed into the flagship's bridge section. The explosions lit up space like miniature suns. Armor plating peeled away from the dreadnought's hull. Emergency lights flashed across its surface. "Direct hit," Lisa reported. "Heavy damage to their command structure." "Get us out of here," Jake said. The Shadowhawk spun away from the flagship and activated its cloak again. Within seconds, the ship vanished from all sensors. Jake watched the tactical display as chaos erupted through the Zelrani fleet. "Amy, what are they saying?" he asked. Amy Rodriguez listened to the enemy communications with wide eyes. "They're panicking, sir. Reports of ghost weapons and invisible attackers. The flagship is trying to restore command functions." "Are they pursuing us?" "They don't know where we are," Amy said with a grin. "They're firing at empty space." Jake watched the Zelrani ship spin in circles, searching for an enemy they couldn't see. Some opened fire randomly, hoping to hit something. Others launched fighters that flew in confused patterns. The perfect formation had dissolved into chaos. "Captain," Dr. Murphy said from her station, "I'm reading massive system failures on the flagship. Their command center is completely destroyed." "Will they abort the attack?" Jake asked. Dr. Murphy studied her readings. "Without central coordination, they can't launch a proper assault. The fleet is too big to coordinate without their command ship." Jake felt relief wash over him. The colony was safe, at least for now. 4 million lives had been saved by 2 torpedoes and the courage of 5 people. "Set course for the edge of the system," he ordered. "Best speed." The Shadowhawk left the Zelrani fleet behind, still invisible and undetected. Jake knew they had won this battle, but the war was just beginning. The Zelrani Empire would not ignore this attack. They would want answers, and they would want revenge. 3 days later, the Shadowhawk reached the outer system and broke communications. Silence. Jake sent a coded message to Earth Command, reporting what had happened. The response came back within hours. "Mission parameters have changed," Amy read from the communication. Continue reconnaissance operations. Report all enemy movements. Engage at your discretion. Pete laughed from his engineering station. Engage at your discretion. That's military speak for do whatever you want. They're giving us permission to hunt, Lisa said with satisfaction. Jake nodded. Earth Command understood what the Shadowhawk represented. For the first time, humans had a weapon the Zelrani couldn't counter. A ship that could strike without warning and disappear without trace. Over the next 2 weeks, the ghost ship began its campaign of terror. Jake led his crew on 7 different missions, each one more daring than the last. They destroyed supply convoys moving through hyperspace. They sabotaged fuel depots and ammunition stores. They rescued human ships caught behind enemy lines. The pattern was always the same. The Shadowhawk would appear from nowhere, strike with deadly precision, and vanish before the enemy could respond. No Zelrani ship ever got a clear sensor reading. No survivor could describe their attacker. Captain, Amy said during their 8th mission, I'm intercepting Zelrani military communications. They're calling us the ghost ship. Jake smiled grimly. What are they saying? Fear, mostly. Reports of impossible attacks. Ships destroyed by invisible enemies. Some commanders are refusing to operate in small groups. Lisa looked up from her station. Good, fear is a weapon too. The crew had changed over the past weeks. They moved with deadly efficiency, striking like phantoms in the night. Pete had modified their weapons for maximum terror effect. Their attacks left burning wrecks that served as warnings to other Zelrani ships. Amy, any word on enemy fleet movements? Jake asked. Yes, sir. They're massing ships in the Vega system. 3 full battle groups, nearly 600 vessels. Jake studied the tactical data. 600 ships meant the Zelrani were taking the ghost threat seriously. They were changing their tactics, moving in larger groups for protection. They're adapting, Dr. Murphy observed, learning from our attacks. Then we adapt too, Jake replied. Pete, how are our weapon systems? All green, Captain. I've been working on some modifications. Want to give the Zelrani something new to worry about? Jake walked to the main viewport and stared at the stars. Somewhere out there, Zelrani commanders were planning their next move. They were probably studying every attack, looking for patterns and weaknesses. The enemy was smart and resourceful. They would not stay confused forever, Captain, Lisa said. New orders from command. Jake read the message and felt his blood chill. Intelligence had discovered that the Zelrani were building new sensor arrays specifically designed to detect cloaked ships. The Empire's best scientists were working around the clock to find the ghost ship. How long do we have? He asked. Dr. Murphy ran calculations on her console. Based on Zelrani technology levels, maybe 6 months, possibly less if they get lucky. 6 months to cause as much damage as possible. 6 months to make the Zelrani. Empire understand that humans would never surrender. 6 months to become a legend that would outlive them all. Set course for the Vega system, Jake ordered. If they want to mass their fleets, let's give them something to remember. The Shadowhawk turned toward enemy space, carrying its crew deeper into danger. Behind them, the legend of the ghost ship continued to grow. Zelrani mothers told their children stories of the invisible demon that hunted in the dark. Zelrani admirals demanded answers their scientists couldn't provide, and in the depths of space, 5 humans prepared to become the nightmare that would haunt an empire's dreams. Admiral Exver stood in the command center of his flagship, staring at the tactical display with burning eyes. For 3 months, the ghost ship had terrorized his fleets. 17 supply convoys destroyed. 4 fuel depots reduced to ash. 3 rescue operations that saved human ships from certain death, and still, no one had seen the enemy. Report, he ordered his science officer. Sensor grid deployment is 70% complete across the target systems, the officer replied. Our new detection arrays should reveal any cloaked vessel within 5 light years. The expert nodded grimly. The ghost ship had made him look like a fool in front of the high command. Some whispered that he was chasing shadows, that the attacks were random accidents. But Dexver knew better. Someone was out there hunting his ships with surgical precision. What about the weapon analysis? He asked. The energy signatures are definitely human in origin, another officer reported. But the technology is far beyond what we believed they possessed. These quantum torpedoes are more advanced than our own weapons. Dexver clenched his fists. The High Command had always dismissed humans as primitive scavengers. Now those same scavengers were making the mighty Zelrani Empire look weak. His career would be over if he didn't find this ghost ship soon. Meanwhile, Jake Morrison guided the Shadowhawk through the Arcturus sector, hunting for his next target. The crew had grown confident after months of successful missions. They moved like a well-oiled machine, each person knowing their role perfectly. Contact on long-range sensors, Lisa Carter reported. Zelrani Cruiser Squadron, 4 ships heading for the Procyon system. Jake studied the tactical display. 4 cruisers meant about 2,000 enemy crew members. More importantly, these ships were carrying supplies to the new Zelrani base at Procyon. Destroying them would slow enemy expansion by weeks. Amy, any escort vessels? He asked. Amy Rodriguez scanned the communications frequencies. Negative, Captain. They're traveling alone. Looks like standard cargo run. Dr. Murphy looked up from her science station with concern. Captain, I'm detecting some unusual energy readings from those ships. They might be carrying more than supplies. What kind of readings? Jake asked. High-energy particle signatures. Could be new sensor equipment or weapons technology. Jake made his decision quickly. If the Zelrani were transporting new technology, the Shadowhawk had to stop them. Every day the enemy grew stronger and smarter. Soon they would develop countermeasures for the cloaking system. Take us in, Lisa. Silent approach. The Shadowhawk closed on the Zelrani squadron like a hunting predator. The enemy ships continued on their course, unaware that death stalked them through the darkness. Their hulls gleamed in the starlight, painted with the proud symbols of the Empire. 1,000 meters in closing, Lisa whispered. 800, 500. Pete, are we ready? Jake asked. Torpedoes armed and locked, Pete Sullivan confirmed. I've programmed them for maximum spread. All 4 ships will go down together. Jake watched the enemy vessels grow larger on the screen. Somewhere inside those ships, Zelrani officers planned the conquest of human worlds. They probably thought they were safe, protected by the vastness of space and their superior technology. Fire, Jake ordered. 8 quantum torpedoes streaked from the Shadowhawk's launch tubes. They split into 2 groups, targeting the cruiser's engine sections and weapon arrays. The explosions lit up space like a deadly fireworks display. All 4 enemy ships were crippled within seconds. Direct hits on all targets, Lisa reported with satisfaction. They're dead in space, but something was wrong. Instead of the usual chaos and panic, the Zelrani ships were responding with coordinated precision. Emergency lights flashed in specific patterns. Distress signals went out on multiple frequencies at once. Amy, what are they transmitting? Jake asked. Amy's face went pale as she listened to the enemy communications. Captain, they're not calling for help. They're sending our attack. Vector, weapon signatures, and energy readings to Fleet Command. Dr. Murphy's scanner began beeping frantically. Captain, I'm detecting massive energy buildup from the cruisers. They're overloading their reactors. Jake realized the truth in a flash of horror. This had been a trap. The 4 cruisers were bait. Loaded with sensors and recording equipment instead of supplies, the Zelrani had sacrificed their own ships to gather data on the ghost ship. Lisa, get us out of here now, he shouted. The Shadowhawk spun away from the dying cruisers just as their reactors exploded. The combined blast created a massive energy pulse that washed over the fleeing ship. Alarms screamed across the bridge. Our system's overloaded. Cloak is fluctuating, Pete reported, his voice tight with worry. The energy pulse damaged our phase generators. How bad? Jake asked. We're partially visible. Any decent sensor array will pick us up. Jake felt his stomach drop. For months, invisibility had been their greatest weapon. Now they were exposed. vulnerable to every enemy ship in the sector. Amy, scan for pursuit, he ordered. Multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace, she replied grimly. Zelrani fleet elements moving to intercept. They know exactly where we are. The trap had been perfect. Admiral Vexver had studied every attack, analyzed every pattern. He had used the ghost ship's own tactics against them, sacrificing 4 ships to gather the data he needed. Captain, Dr. Murphy called out, the damage to our cloak isn't permanent. I can repair it, but I need 6 hours and a safe harbor. We don't have 6 hours, Lisa said, watching the tactical display fill with enemy contacts. We've got 20 Zelrani ships closing on our position. Jake stared at the approaching enemy fleet. For the first time since the campaign began, the Shadowhawk was in real danger. The hunters had become the hunted. Plot a course for the Kepler Nebula, he ordered. Maximum speed? That's 3 hours away, Pete warned. They'll catch us long before we reach cover. Then we'll have to fight, Jake replied. Alert all stations. Battle conditions? The ghost ship that had terrorized the Zelrani Empire was about to face its greatest test. Behind them, Admiral Vexver smiled with grim satisfaction as his trap finally began to close. The Shadowhawk raced through space with 20 Zelrani warships closing behind them. Jake Morrison watched the tactical display as the gap between hunter and prey grew smaller with each passing minute. The damaged cloaking system flickered like a dying flame, sometimes hiding the ship and sometimes leaving it exposed. 2 hours to the nebula, Lisa Carter reported from her station. But they're gaining on us. Pete Sullivan worked frantically at his engineering console, sweat dripping down his face. I'm pushing the engines past redline, Captain. We can't maintain this speed much longer without burning out the reactors. Jake studied the pursuing fleet on the main screen. The Zelrani ships were sleek and deadly, built for speed and combat. Each one carried enough firepower to vaporize the Shadowhawk in seconds. Admiral Vexver had planned this hunt perfectly. Amy, what are they transmitting? Jake asked. Amy Rodriguez listened to the enemy communications with growing concern. They're coordinating a perfect intercept pattern, sir. No matter which way we turn, they'll be waiting for us. Dr. Helen Murphy looked up from her science station with worry in her eyes. Captain, the cloak damage is getting worse. Each time it fails, we're visible longer. They're getting better sensor readings on our position. Jake felt the weight of command pressing down on him. For months, his crew had been the ghosts that haunted Zelrani nightmares. Now they were the ones being hunted, racing toward uncertain safety while death followed close behind. Lisa, any chance we can fight our way through them? He asked. Lisa studied her tactical computer and shook her head. Not with these odds, sir. 20 ships against 1. Even with our advanced weapons, we wouldn't last 5 minutes in open combat. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of overstressed engines and the beeping of warning alarms. Jake looked at each member of his crew. These people who had followed him through impossible missions without question. They deserved better than to die running like scared animals. Captain, Pete called out. I have an idea, but you're not going to like it. Talk to me, Jake said. The nebula ahead of us, the Kepler Nebula, it's full of electromagnetic storms and radiation fields. Our sensors barely work in there, but neither will theirs. If we can reach it, we might be able to hide. Dr. Murphy shook her head. The radiation will fry our systems. The electromagnetic storms will tear the ship apart. Maybe, Pete admitted. But it's better than certain death out here. Jake considered the options. Fight 20 ships and die quickly, or try to hide in a nebula that might kill them slowly. Neither choice was good, but one at least offered hope. Any other traffic in this sector? He asked. Negative, Captain. Just us and them. Jake made his decision. Set course for the nebula, full speed. The Shadowhawk shot toward the swirling clouds of gas and energy ahead. The Kepler Nebula stretched across dozens of light years, filled with the remnants of ancient stars and cosmic storms that had raged for millions of years. Lightning danced between the gas clouds, creating a deadly light show. Entering the nebula now, Lisa reported. Sensors are going crazy. The main screen filled with colors beyond description. Purple and gold gases swirled around the ship while electric storms created walls of brilliant light. The Shadowhawk shook as electromagnetic pulses hammered its hull. Cloak is completely offline, Pete announced. But the good news is their sensors won't work either. Jake watched the tactical display flicker and fade as the nebula's interference overwhelmed their systems. Behind them, the Zelrani fleet had slowed down, unwilling to follow them into the dangerous clouds. Amy, can you hear anything from the pursuit ships? Jake asked. Just static, sir. The electromagnetic interference is blocking all communications. For the first time in hours, Jake felt a moment of relief. They had bought themselves time, but at a terrible cost. The Shadowhawk drifted deeper into the nebula, its systems failing one by one as radiation ate through the hull plating. Damage. Report, Jake ordered. Pete consulted his readings with growing alarm. Engine efficiency down 40%. Life support is failing on decks 3 and 4. The radiation is cooking our electronics. How long can we survive in here? Jake asked. Maybe 12 hours before the radiation kills us, Dr. Murphy replied grimly. Less if we hit one of those lightning storms. Jake stared at the swirling chaos outside the ship. They had escaped immediate death only to face a slower one. But 12 hours was 12 hours. Time to think, time to plan, time to find a way. Out of this trap. Lisa, can you map a course through the nebula? He asked. The storms keep shifting, she replied. But I think there's a path toward the far side. It's dangerous, but possible. Do it. Plot the safest route you can find. As Lisa worked on navigation, Dr. Murphy made a discovery that changed everything. Captain, I'm reading something strange deep in the nebula. Metal signatures, definitely. Artificial? Zelrani ships? Jake asked. No, sir. The metal composition is wrong. This is something else entirely. Jake felt his pulse quicken. Can you get a clearer reading? Dr. Murphy adjusted her sensors, fighting through the interference. It's big, Captain. Much bigger than any ship, and it's old, very old. The metal signature suggests it's been here for centuries. A derelict, Amy suggested. Maybe, Dr. Murphy said. But it's intact and showing power readings. Something is still working inside that thing. Jake made another quick decision. They needed shelter, supplies, and time to repair their ship. Whatever was hidden in the nebula might provide all three. Set course for the contact, he ordered. Take us in slow and careful. The Shadowhawk moved deeper into the cosmic storm, following sensor ghosts toward an ancient mystery. Behind them, Admiral Exver's fleet waited at the nebula's edge like hungry sharks, knowing their prey was trapped inside the electromagnetic maze. But Jake Morrison and his crew had found something the Zelrani admiral never expected. In the heart of the storm lay secrets that would change the balance of power in the galaxy. The Shadowhawk moved through the swirling clouds of the Kepler Nebula like a wounded animal seeking shelter. Lightning storms crackled around the ship as Jake Morrison guided his crew toward the mysterious contact Dr. Murphy had found. The radiation was getting worse by the hour, but they had no choice except to keep going forward. 2 kilometers to the contact, Lisa Carter reported. Her voice was strained from the stress of navigating through the electromagnetic chaos. Whatever it is, it's huge. The main screen flickered as the nebula's interference fought with their sensors. Slowly, a massive shape emerged from the cosmic fog. Jake felt his breath catch in his throat as he saw what waited ahead of them. It was a space station unlike anything he had ever seen. The structure was at least 5 kilometers long and shaped like a giant ring. Strange symbols covered its hull, carved deep into metal that gleamed despite centuries of exposure to the nebula's radiation. Power signatures glowed along its surface in patterns that hurt to look at. "My God," Dr. Helen Murphy whispered from her science station. "Captain, this thing is ancient. I'm reading technology signatures that don't match any known species." Pete Sullivan looked up from his engineering console with wonder in his eyes. "The power source is incredible. Whatever runs that station could keep us alive for years." "Amy," Rodriguez tried to scan the communications frequencies but found only static. No response to our hails, sir. Either nobody's home or they're not interested in talking. Jake studied the alien station through the viewport. It hung in space like a sleeping giant, surrounded by the nebula's dancing lights. The structure looked peaceful, but something about it made his skin crawl. The symbols on its hull seemed to move when he wasn't looking directly at them. "Lisa, any sign of weapons?" he asked. "Nothing obvious," she replied. "But with technology this advanced, their weapons might be beyond our ability to detect." The Shadowhawk's hull groaned as another wave of radiation washed over them. Warning. Lights flashed across every console as systems began to fail. They were running out of time. "Captain," Pete said urgently. "Life support is failing faster than expected. We need to dock with that station or we're all dead within 4 hours." Jake made the hardest decision of his career. "Take us in." "Look for a docking port." The Shadowhawk approached the alien station carefully. As they got closer, Jake could see that the structure was even more impressive than it first appeared. The metal hull was covered with intricate patterns that seemed to tell a story in pictures. Ships fought wars among the stars. Planets burned and died. Entire civilizations rose and fell across the station's surface. "There," Lisa pointed to a section of the station where the hull curved inward. "That looks like a docking bay." As the Shadowhawk moved toward the opening, lights began to glow along the station's surface. The ancient structure was coming alive, responding to their presence. Jake felt his heart pound as they committed to entering the alien vessel. "Atmosphere is present in the docking bay," Dr. Murphy reported. "Breathable for humans. Temperature is within normal range." The docking bay was enormous, easily large enough to hold a dozen ships the size of the Shadowhawk. Strange machinery lined the walls, covered in the same mysterious symbols they had seen outside. Everything was made from the same gleaming metal that seemed to absorb and reflect light at the same time. "Docking clamps engaged," Lisa announced. "We're secure?" Jake felt the ship settle into place with a soft thud. For the first time in hours, the constant shaking from the nebulous storm stopped. The silence felt strange after so much chaos. "Pete, start repairs on the cloak immediately," Jake ordered. "Amy, keep scanning for any signs of life. Lisa, maintain watch on our perimeter." "I don't want any surprises." Dr. Murphy studied her readings with growing excitement. "Captain, the technology here is incredible. The power source appears to be some kind of contained singularity." "The energy output is off the charts. Is it safe?" Jake asked. "As far as I can tell. The containment fields are more advanced than anything humanity has ever built. Whoever made this station solved problems we haven't even thought of yet." Jake walked to the main viewport and stared out at the docking bay. The alien machinery hummed quietly, waiting for commands that might never come. He wondered what had happened to the beings who built this place. Were they extinct? Had they moved on to other dimensions? Or were they still here, watching from the shadows? "Captain," Amy called out with alarm in her voice. "I'm picking up movement outside the ship. Something big is approaching the docking bay." Jake spun around to look at the tactical display. A massive shape was moving through the station's corridors toward their location. It was too large to be a person, but it moved with obvious intelligence and purpose. "Weapons status?" he asked. "Armed and ready," Lisa replied. "But Captain, if we start a fight inside this station, we might damage something we can't repair." The approaching contact stopped just outside the docking bay. Jake could see it through the viewport now, a mechanical construct covered in the same strange symbols as the station. It stood 3 meters tall and moved on multiple legs like a giant spider. Red lights glowed where its eyes should be. The machine studied the Shadowhawk for several minutes, then turned and walked away. It disappeared into the station's depths without making any threatening moves. "What was that?" Pete asked. "A guardian." "Maybe," Dr. Murphy suggested. "Something left behind to watch over the station." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. They were not alone on this ancient vessel. Whatever intelligence had built this place had left watchdogs behind. The question was whether those guardians saw humans as guests or invaders. "Get those repairs done fast," he told his crew. "I want to be ready to leave at a moment's notice." Outside, in the nebula, Admiral Lexver's fleet waited with growing impatience. The Zelrani commander knew his prey was trapped somewhere in the electromagnetic storm. All he had to do was wait for them to emerge or die from radiation poisoning. But neither the Admiral nor Jake Morrison knew that they had stumbled onto something far more dangerous than either human or Zelrani technology. Deep in the station's core, ancient systems were awakening after centuries of sleep. Pete Sullivan worked frantically on the Shadowhawk's damaged cloaking system while the ancient alien station hummed around them. 6 hours had passed since they docked, and the repairs were nearly complete. The mechanical guardians had appeared. Twice more, studying their ship before disappearing into the station's depths. "Cloak is at 90% efficiency," Pete reported. "Good enough to fool Zelrani sensors." Jake Morrison felt relief wash over him. They could escape this place and return to hunting enemy ships. But Dr. Helen Murphy had made discoveries that changed everything. "Captain, you need to see this," she called from her science station. "I've been studying the station's database. The symbols on the walls aren't just decoration. They're a historical record." Jake walked over to her console and looked at the translated images. "What am I seeing?" "The rise and fall of the Zelrani Empire," Dr. Murphy said quietly. "This station was built by a species called the Architects. They've been watching the galaxy for thousands of years, recording the history of every civilization." The images told a terrible story. The Zelrani had conquered dozens of worlds, enslaving or destroying every species they encountered. Billions of beings had died under Zelrani rule. But the record showed something else, something that made Jake's blood run cold. "The Architects didn't just watch," Dr. Murphy continued. "When a species became too aggressive, too dangerous to the galaxy, they intervened. They have weapons that could destroy entire star systems." Jake stared at the ancient symbols with growing horror. "Are you saying they're planning to wipe out the Zelrani Empire? Maybe they're waiting to see if someone else will do it for them." Before Jake could respond, Amy Rodriguez called out from her communications station. "Captain, I'm detecting massive energy buildup from the station's core. Something big is happening." The lights in the docking bay began to pulse in complex patterns. The mechanical guardians returned, dozens of them this time, moving with obvious purpose. They ignored the human ship completely, focusing on some greater task. "Lisa, what's our status?" Jake asked. "All systems are operational," Lisa Carter replied. "We can leave whenever you give the order," Jake hesitated. The smart move was to run, to escape this place and continue their war against the Zelrani. But something told him that bigger events were unfolding, events that could change the fate of the entire galaxy. "Amy, scan the nebula perimeter," he ordered. "Are the Zelrani ships still there?" Amy worked her controls and nodded grimly. "Yes, sir. 23 ships now. Admiral Lexver has called in reinforcements." "They're not going anywhere." The trap was perfect. The Zelrani fleet surrounded the nebula like a net, waiting for the ghost ship to emerge. They had enough firepower to destroy a small planet. Even with the repaired cloak, escaping would be nearly impossible. "Captain," Dr. Murphy said with excitement in her voice, "I'm reading something incredible from the station's weapon systems. They're not just targeting the Zelrani fleet. They're preparing to target the entire Zelrani home system." Jake felt his heart stop. "Can you communicate with them? Tell them to stop?" "I've been trying, but they don't respond to any frequency we can broadcast on." The station's weapons began to charge with power that made the Shadowhawk's engines look like candles. Energy flowed through conduits that ran the length of the massive structure. The ancient machinery awakened fully for the first time in centuries. "Captain," Pete called out in panic. "Whatever they're powering up is drawing energy from the nebula itself. The electromagnetic storms are being pulled into the station." Jake watched through the viewport as the swirling clouds of the nebula began to collapse toward the alien structure. Lightning jumped between the station's hull plates as it fed on the cosmic storm's power. The architects had built a weapon that could harvest the energy of stars. "We have to warn the Zelrani fleet," Jake said. His crew stared at him in shock. Lisa was the first to speak. "Captain, those are the same ships that have been hunting us for months. They want to kill us." "I know," Jake replied. "But we can't let the architects commit genocide. No species deserves to be wiped out completely." Amy worked her communications system with desperate speed. "I can't reach them through the nebula's interference. The only way to warn them is to leave the station." Jake knew that leaving meant certain death. The moment they emerged from the nebula, the XVRS fleet would destroy them. But millions of Zelrani civilians lived in their home system. Children who had never held a weapon. Families who just wanted to live in peace. "Take us out," he ordered. The Shadowhawk undocked from the alien station and flew toward the nebula's edge. Behind them, the architect weapon continued to charge, drawing power from the cosmic storm. The ancient station glowed like a miniature sun as it prepared to unleash destruction across the galaxy. "Exiting the nebula now," Lisa reported. "Zelrani fleet is right where we left them." Admiral Vexver's ships opened fire immediately. Energy beams and torpedoes filled space around the Shadowhawk. The small human ship dodged and weaved between the attacks, its cloak flickering under the massive weapons fire. "Amy, broadcast on all frequencies," Jake ordered. "Tell them about the weapon. Tell them to run." "Sir, they're not listening." "They think it's a trick." Jake watched the tactical display as more Zelrani ships closed in for the kill. His crew had followed him into certain death without question. They were heroes, every one of them. "Captain," Dr. Murphy called out, "the architect weapon is fully charged. They're firing." A beam of pure energy erupted from the ancient station, cutting through space faster than light itself. It passed harmlessly through the Zelrani fleet, heading for their distant home system. In 3 hours, the beam would arrive and turn the Zelrani homeworld into ash. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of Earth," Jake broadcast on all frequencies. "Your homeworld is about to be destroyed by an alien weapon. You have 3 hours to evacuate your people. This is not a trick. This is not a lie. Your families are going to die unless you act now." Admiral Vexver's voice crackled over the communications system. "Human captain, if this is true, why do you warn us?" "Because no one deserves to watch their world burn," Jake replied. "The Zelrani." Admiral ordered his fleet to stop firing. For a moment, space was quiet except for the distant rumble of the collapsing nebula. Then Vexver spoke again. "Human ship, you have given us the greatest gift possible. The chance to save our people. We will not forget this." The Zelrani fleet turned and jumped to hyperspace, racing home to evacuate their world. Jake watched them go, knowing his crew had saved millions of lives. "Captain," Lisa said quietly. "We're alone now," Jake nodded. The Shadowhawk drifted in empty space, its mission complete. Behind them, the ancient station powered down, its task finished. The architects had spoken, and the galaxy would never be the same. In the years that followed, the story of the ghost ship became legend. Humans and Zelrani told their children about the invisible vessel that appeared from nowhere, fought an empire, and vanished into history. The war ended not with conquest, but with understanding. And somewhere in the depths of space, 5 humans had become immortal.